What's going to happen?
I don't know.
They're going to take 3
Right,
hours to
donut
edit a
while
piano part.
Krispy Kreme.
Oh,
Anybody
yeah.
want a donut?
Yeah.
I've got some orange.
You.
Tony, looks like John. It looks like you got a salad to your.
Look what I got.
What's that?
Oh,
He's got a haircut. Since last-
Dude,
Yeah.
it's so cool, man.
We're on, fellas.
It's like real technology.
Thanks.
Sorry.
now we have to behave ourselves. We're on live.
Lenny, you're gonna play a record for us or something?
Sure.
Um,
I have a few.
Are you doing your radio show?
Yes, yes. I
Okay.
do it. I use an Electro Voice microphone. I'm sure you'd like to know that.
Nice.
And Pro Tools on Pro
That's all the
Tools.
gear we're gonna talk about today.
Okay, I'm ready.
But so you are doing it. You do it. Do you always do it from out in Pennsylvania?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I go up to the attic and I have the old microphone and I do my voice breaks and you know.
I thought it was in
kind
the
of fun.
basement.
Well, you know, I moved it up there. It's this. I can't say the subterranean attic anymore, but it's kind of fun, gotta say.
And is it you play records or is it a CD or like how do you go and look for what you're?
They have a huge digital library, and a lot of it is off a playlist. And then I program 1 or 2 of the things myself. You know, the Monday moment of mind expansion, or
Yeah.
the Tuesday time machine. So.
I liked
Coming
your Earth Day show on Tuesday night. Yeah.
That
Which
was pretty
nice.
good.
Yeah.
I did the pot day on Monday.
How'd that go?
That was great.
Can't
Don't
remember.
bogart that joint, my friend. What else did I play? One Toke Over the Line. Ab Calloway's Reefer Blues.
Mhm.
You know, there's a lot of pot songs out there, and people have to know that we like to sing.
And
I hope everybody's having a good time. At least I believe that all of us are surrounded by musical instruments, large record collections that need sorting, and you know, other things that give us a rich inner life.
yes.
I alphabetized my CDs, which are behind me.
Nice.
That was my big thing.
No,
My
you knew
isolation.
the alphabet.
It was nice. Yeah. Vinyl was already done.
Yeah, my albums are pretty good, but my singles are a complete mess. So I've been, you know, but what do you classify them? It's, you know, it's not only alphabetizing, it's like what, you know, genre, and the ones that, you know, back and forth. It's not easy, guys. It's really hard to have a record collection.
Hey, let's see. Speaking of record collectors, I mean, I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but have you ever considered doing another Nuggets? And why?
Well, I've always wanted to do a reggae Nuggets.
Mm.
Oh, wow.
I think the actual garage thing has been covered to ad infinitum.
Right.
And now, you know, what you have is a bunch of garage records that are kind of really garagey, but not great records. And my thing for Nuggets was that they were great records that happened to be in the garage genre.
Right.
So, you know, but now a lot of them, you know, they got a fuzz tone and they got a Farfisa, but they're not that great a record. But I would love to do a reggae Nuggets of all my favorite 70s and 60s Nuggets.
Nice.
Nobody's offered that to me. So
Whose idea was the original Nuggets?
Jack Holzman.
Wow. And
Jack
was,
Holzman, you
was it
know.
supposed to be for garage specifically?
No, my feeling was that he had just gotten one of the first cassette players and he wanted to clean out his record collection from all those albums that had one good cut. So his brief to me was to gather these records together, you know, and on his list of about 5, there was one from Little Anthony and the Imperials, a psychedelic album and something else. And he just gave me the list and let me do what I wanted. And I just put together all those records, some of which aren't really garage. You know, they were just kind of weird records. That's why you have The Shadows of Night, Oh Yeah, instead of the national anthem of garage rock, Gloria. You know, some of them were just a little ones that needed to be highlighted from great records, or, you know, weird one-off singles. But hey, who knew it would be still buying me beers? In fact, all over the world. It's really remarkable. And I had the pick of the litter, so that was really good. Nuggets.
50th anniversary coming up. We got to do the show.
Let's hope we can do the show.
Yeah.
We have till it came out in the fall of '72.
All right. So in
So
2
we have
years.
some time to get together.
Huh.
Hopefully we'll be out playing sooner or later.
Yeah, what's the, anybody have any thoughts about that? I mean, geez.
Well, spooky ghost gigs are naturally socially distant gigs. That's what I was thinking. I can stay in business.
And Gerry, why do you think that is, Gerry?
You know, I've thought about that a few times. I haven't come up with a good answer. I tried showering. That didn't improve.
How about tuning?
Tuning, I tried that.
Yeah.
No, it's still no good. Timing,
good.
all those things.
I think your sound is just too complex for the general public. You know what I mean? It's just so complicated and beautiful at the same time. They're going,
It's kind of like myself.
it's overwhelming.
Kevin, are you in your studio right now?
No, well, my studio is my bedroom these days, you know? Yeah, so I've got, I don't know, I can't really show you. I'm going to see if I can, without, hang on, let me just do a little manipulation here and see if I can.
Boy,
It's where the magic happens.
It's-
talk about a casting couch.
I would say not really any magic going on here. Hang on, let me just make sure I turn this
What,
off.
in the bedroom or the studio?
Well, I can't really answer that. It's down here. It's all in here.
Right on.
It's like here and here, and
Yeah.
that's my view out Central Park.
Oh, wow. That's great.
So my actual studio space was close by, you know, 10 blocks away.
So what's the deal? How far along were they at Power Station?
Oh, a power station. I haven't been in Power Station since January of 2019. Last time I saw, which was in maybe February this year, a lot of the construction was basic. Well, they'd done a fair amount of construction in the common areas. So the new reception area, they put in all the equipment for the new elevator shaft. Some of the lounge areas had been reconfigured. All the basement had been completely reconfigured, and it was looking really good. It was all soundproofed at this point, and they were just doing, I'd say they probably had about another month to go on that. But the studios themselves hadn't been touched. They were all basically just, you know, wrapped in plastic and, you know, consoles taken out and gear taken out. But yeah, I think they were hoping that they could get one of the rooms back online by summer, but then that's not going to happen now.
Were you planning on going back?
As originally articulated in the plans, my room was reconfigured into another space. So unless when they got to the end of the construction, if they suddenly had a space that they thought, oh, we didn't really anticipate using it for this, we should maybe, you know, offer it to one of the former tenants, but it didn't seem likely. So yeah, so I was in another space close by. And then just about 3 weeks ago, I thought, you know, maybe I should take the social distancing thing just a little more seriously, even though I was only walking from my apartment to another apartment building and going in and really having no interaction with anybody, and dealing with clients via, you know, internet and email and text. Just walking 10 blocks, I thought, well, if I were on my own, I'm willing to take the risk, but I've got a son and a wife, and you got to be a little more conscious of what's going on in the world. So I've been at home. I bought myself a little pair of Adams speakers, and I have the little artist controller, and everything I do is in the box anyway. So I just, yeah. So I've been working that way.
I know, just going out, you know, I think that's the thing that most people who are not in the city, like Lenny, if you were in the city, I mean, the existence of having to like put on a hazmat suit just to go down, get the newspaper or get the mail, and then come up and like that part of it is really kind of, for me, is the trickier part. Is, I mean, it's easy to stay away from people. You just kind of don't go near people. But being in an apartment building is really kind of.
Yeah, I don't know how that is, like going up and down on elevators with people and.
I would think elevators are like
Yeah.
the scariest fucking thing at this point.
Yeah.
Well, you know, all I know is it's going to be a whole new world. And what I'm somewhat concerned about is that since everybody's so used to communicating now by screen, by looking at something like this, which is pretty amazing, I'm wondering whether we're not going into a whole 21st century screen world and in our own individual pods at home. And that's, you know, people are going to get used to communicating like this, you know, when they get to technology up another, you know, few years, you know, when everything is live and maybe big screens and stuff, we might not ever have to go out into the universe. It's a very science fiction scenario.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately people will want to, you know,
Yeah.
if you think about what's happened in the, you know, especially our industry in the last 20 years, people have been working in their own silos for so long. We, you know, so the move to working remotely has not been something that's been that difficult for the music industry in terms of recording and, you know, overdubbing, because we're so used to doing that. But in terms of the live thing, yeah, that's a hard thing to embrace. But I think humanity is, at the end of the day, the need and the desire to be in real touch with people as opposed to this kind of touch, the virtual touch, I think will transcend this moment. And I think ultimately people are going to go back out there. And yes, the technology will get better. And I think certain industries will embrace this and see it as a value add to their business. And maybe it'll make work maybe better for some people in certain instances. But I don't think fundamentally humanity is going to change. You know, they said the same thing when television first came out.
Yeah, I was thinking that, like, when, as Lenny was saying that, you know, that we've been moving towards working from home. So this is a huge shove in that direction, and maybe that's happening anyway. So this shove is a good thing, but I don't think the social thing will break down, unless it's really weird where we can't actually physically be there. I think people are also going to want to have the social aspect of everything and music, you know.
I would hope so.
Well, you know, so John, Kevin, and myself pretty much are indoor people, right? And Tony, Jimmy, Lenny, and Gerry are all live before, like, as well as studio plays. You all do live. Your life is.
We make a living from large gatherings of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very close together, sweating.
Yeah.
But boy, that's hard to kind of wrap one's head around, the fact that there is going to at least be a timeout, you know.
Yeah. I'm figuring, really, I mean, I'd like to see it happen by the fall, but I'm figuring that maybe not till
Next year.
next year we'll be I mean, me and you, Tony, we should be on our way to New Zealand tonight.
I know.
Amazing.
We're supposed to do a tour of Australia this whole month.
Wow.
New Zealand this week. Yeah.
You know, but hey, everybody's got the same story.
Is probably dealing with it pretty well, so you could probably just camp out in New Zealand for a month and play some shows. Maybe New Zealand and South Korea, you know, where they flatten the curve. Maybe you should do the flatten the curve tour.
Yeah.
Just go everywhere where the curve is flattening.
That's what's going to happen, John. Totally. You know, they'll be the first ones to get the tours. You know? So,
Well, you know,
the routing sucks, but the tour's great.
right.
yeah.
The other country that has really flattened the curve, ironically, is South Africa. I was just hearing a clip on the radio this morning where they, going back to 2000 when they had an outbreak of both TB and HIV, and the president at the time was not a science believer. And so, you know, obviously when it became more catastrophic, they put it, you know, as public health policy in place, tracing, contact tracing, you know, 25,000 people who were dedicated to that, you know, testing. And so when they reached 100 cases of COVID, they just enacted that whole thing, and they basically just flattened the curve.
amazing.
quickly. Yeah. So, you know, this thing, it can be done, but you know, you have to have public policy that understands the benefit of public health and why government works. And you know, you don't need inept or corrupt government. You just need good government. So
Right.
Ha 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 ha.
Oh.
Why didn't we
Now
all
I
think of
get
that before? Holy smokes.
Wait, you're saying that a chaos governmental plan is not a great idea?
well, John, if it was a great idea, you wouldn't be sitting at home right now, and neither would us. And Lenny and Tony would be on the way to New Zealand or Australia. Yeah.
Point taken, Kevin.
And the secret police will be on their way to your door right now.
They can come get me anytime they want, Lenny. The fighting Irish will.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
We had a lot of Irish people on this. Wait a second. Is this well demographic?
Tony hooked that
I
up.
thought you were Irish, Lenny.
This is Ozum.
I'm just a little Irish.
Okay.
When I'm in the black bush, I get more Irish.
You know, last week we had, we did the first one of these last week, and we had,
You had one without us?
well,
I'm out of here.
I'm out of here.
but we had Eric Bazillion on from the Hooters, a
I love Eric.
dear friend of ours, and he's in Sweden. And there is nothing, there's no lockdown there.
Yeah.
People are in the streets, they're in the bars.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy, right? I mean,
Yeah,
every,
but they,
And is COVID rampant there, or?
yes,
like, you know?
yes.
yeah, it's starting to hit. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's rising, I
In
believe.
fact, my friend Eric Ross, who originally worked with Tori Amos,
Right.
his wife is Swedish, so they moved there last year, and they got a 16-year-old and a 11-year-old, and the schools were closed down. And just this past Sunday, so 2 days ago, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, we were chatting on the phone, and he said the government just announced that schools are opening again on Monday.
Wow.
And even though the curve is going up, the chief medical officer for the Swedish government believes in the herd immunity system. And you know, if people have to die for everybody to get immunity, that's part of the compact they're willing to make. I'm like, okay. So they're trying to figure out, should they send their kids to school or not, like, because they have another 5 weeks of term. That's a really tough choice to put people. You know, it's a really tough choice. Yeah.
I thought they're
When do we
supposed
get
be
to the
sensible
gear?
on
That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Is it
Beer.
more trouble or
I
less
thought it was
bass?
beer.
My
I
question.
thought it was a beer club.
Beer club.
This is pretty fun, though. I mean, it is amazing to see. You know, we're all hanging.
We are, and everyone seems in a good frame of mind, which is, I think we just got to stay there as long as we can.
Well, you know,
Sure.
I mean, it's good
I
that we
think it-
have creative things we can do at home. You know,
Yes.
we can play our instruments, we can write songs, we can work on our long procrastinated solo things. You know, we can.
Hey, Lenny, are you in your book? Are you still writing?
Oh,
the
and
book?
also finishing a book. Yeah, actually, I'm in the very last, let's see. Here's the very last chapter, guys. It's Seattle, 1991. As you can see, I began it on December 2nd, 19. And as of 3 days ago, I hit 8,000 words and maybe another 4,000 to go. And that's the
Wow.
last chapter
Wow.
of this
So
whole.
can you tell us a little bit for those who might not know what the book is about?
Well, it's a candid story of Tony Shanahan when he was a young boy and his adventures in Catholic school.
Jerry, do you want to weigh
Sorry,
in?
Tony, I had to reveal it
It's all
now.
about the outfit.
Is it tentatively called Put It In, Coach?
It's called Lightning Striking, and what it is kind of a evolutionary history of rock and roll through its legendary times and places, i.e. Memphis 54, Philadelphia 59, Liverpool 62, San Francisco 67. There's about 10 of them. Well, actually, no, there's not about, it is exactly 10. And, you know, London in 77, a really fun metal chapter, Los Angeles hair metal versus Norwegian death metal. It's been great, but each topic is so involved that you know, and so many players that it's really taken me 5 to 6 months a chapter to boil everything down and kind of say it creatively. But I'm almost there, which
How
is,
did you decide to not do New York in the 70s?
oh, I
mean,
did, you know, New York
did.
19, yeah, New York 75. That's as the English publisher says, the shop window chapter.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a New Orleans chapter in 57. It's not really the year is not specifically about the year. It's how they get to the year and what happens and why it's a real locus point, and whether, frankly speaking, in the 21st century, you can have such a geographical scene. Because one of the things is that all of these scenes kind of developed on their own for a while, now all pre-internet. So now I had to go to San Francisco in 1967 to see the Grateful Dead, to even have some idea what they sounded like, Big Brother, Quicksilver. And now if I hear about something, I can click on it, and that sense of extreme local is not happening anymore. So maybe that's a sea change. And of course, you know, I suspect that rock and roll as a genre is also kind of at its end of days. I mean, you know, now we have whole different ways in which music sounds, you know, and how we make music. I love the electric guitar and I'm proud to play it, but pretty much everything that can be conceived of on the electric guitar has been played. And so now, you know, you have a whole new set of instruments, ways to record them. Music sounds very much different than back in the 20th century. But I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, music's change, evolve, you know, it becomes a music of interpretation rather than innovation, like jazz, for instance. Now, great interpreters, but you know, everybody's, it's been around the horn. Blues is another thing, great blues players, but they're not going to do anything we've never heard. And now it's for a whole new generation of people who have, you know, this incredible array of electronic instruments that they make music out of.
Well, Gerry, you use a lot of kind of
Toys.
toys that we haven't heard before, that manipulates music into being something that we've never heard before.
Yeah. No, I was listening. It was funny, you know, of course there's guitar is, and I love the electric guitar. Guitar has been really trammeled, like all those areas, blues and rock, you know, people can play fast, people can play all kinds of things, but you know, a lot of the bands and the songwriting and stuff, it's a lot of those areas have been really covered. But I still hear some, like there's this new Irish band and they're young and the lyrics are great. It's like poetry, and their playing is really like punk, like a punk band. And I love it. I think it's just as exciting as hearing them play it as when we were trying to play it, you know. And I find that inspirational. I find that, you know, so the spirit of the way you use whatever you use is also incredibly important. And I think that's when we play live, that's what we realize, you know.
Amen.
And that's the thing that I miss. You know, we were kind of joking around about playing live, but that moment, you can have a transcendent moment. The audience can have a transcendent moment with all of the people here. We've all experienced that with the people we work with and the artists we work with, and we've had them ourselves. We've seen audience members have them. That's an incredible thing, and that can only happen in a live moment. It can't. I mean, it can happen with a record too, but that communication between musicians and people listening, that's a symbiosis. It's necessary, and for this transcendent moment, I think that's good. You know, can't wait to get back to that. I miss that. You know.
Oh yeah. It's really.
Has anyone started to like do any like collaboration, like from at home? Like, are people sending files around?
There's a little bit of that. I'm sorry, I kind of sidetracked the message there a little bit, but I'm doing a little bit of that, and certainly that's what we were talking about earlier. Like when people get more used to that, it does exist, but it still has some stumbling blocks. I just downloaded and learned some new software like last week that I never would have, called Source Connect, where you can do live full bit audio. You know, you guys would probably know more about it, but so we're evolving that part of things. Maybe the work will, I mean, it's already shifting this way, and maybe we'll be able to lower our overheads and work more for people. You know, I did some tracks for a guy the other day. He's not really a professional musician, but he likes to do his songs. This sweet guy sent me a song. It's a lovely little song. And I just, you know, I worked on it for a few hours in a day, and I sent it back to him, and he keeps writing me emails saying how excited he is. So that's something, you know. It's small, but it's something, you know.
Yeah. Hey, here's a question that we just had, an anonymous question. And this is for anyone. Do you think there are ways we can use effects and sound design to make guitar into a more relevant instrument in modern music?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's part of the new, you know, the journey. It's not evolution or de-evolution, it's the journey of the guitar, you know. And there's a lot of, you know, interesting processing and really, you know, and people are being really creative with it. But there has to be, it's a two-way thing. It's not just a box of springs and you shake it and it makes a rattle. That in itself is not, you know, that's great. But what are we going to use this for?
Right.
So how can you use this and make it effective? And
Are you
that's the
set up-
challenge. That's always been the challenge in music.
Are you set up in a room right now where you have your effects?
On the other side, yeah, I have a bunch of stuff.
I got some.
What do you got, Jimmy?
I got, you know, I've never met a pedal I didn't like. You know, even a bad pedal is going to inspire you to do something. You know, there's the one I've been messing around with, Super Ego Plus, with just does crazy. I mean, that's just one of the things.
Yeah.
What is that? We didn't
You
catch.
know, I always like finding the things that I like finding the things that pedals do that the company didn't plan for them to do. You know, like when you go to the outer edges of the knobs, there's always something there that's just so stupid and crazy that, you know, you'll find something for it. You know?
Hey, let me ask you a question about pedals. So for the guys who use them, the order of the pedals, right? The order in which you line them up. Now, I would imagine that as you change where you put them, that like if you're delaying a flange, that sounds different than flanging a delay. And or just, is there like a logic to how one sets up their sequence?
Oh, yeah. I think so. I think certain things are interchangeable and certain things make a difference in the signal chain, like the way you order distortions, if you reverse them or whatever. I just got a little box where I can plug two in and then I can turn them either one off, but I can reverse the order in which they hit each other. And it actually is, you know, putting a fuzz into an overdrive as opposed to the other way around. It really changes the nature of it completely. It's somewhat subtle, but it's also not really, but it changes the texture of things a lot.
Yeah, it's the same thing for like in using effects in the studio, you know, how you might line them up. Totally changes.
But there's a kind of a classic order, I think, as well. I mean, you know, you run into things where if you distort an amp and then you use delay, well, then your delays are going to be distorted. Whereas if you distort the sound going into the delay and hit a clean amp, then you're going to have clean delays. You know what I mean? It adds up in a different way.
Yeah.
And both are useful, but one is more common, you know. It's kind of
usually delay is last, and, you know, reverb delay you put at the end.
Right. Reverb for me is always the last. It's like, seems like you don't want, once you hit the reverb, there's no going back.
Can't get it back in the box then.
And what's wrong with that, John? Are you saying that that's a problem?
You know, I'm anti-reverb, right? You know that. Come on.
Yeah, but you know, I'm so reverb, you know, I
How
love
many reverb pedals have I sold you, John Aniello?
Yeah. By the way, I'm down my stock on the Holy Grails. I've only got 5 left. So if you find any, let me know.
I will.
Yeah, I hoard Holy Grails because I love them so much, and they're not fixable.
I got really into pedals for a while playing bass, flangers and what is it, like fuzz, filter, which I really liked. But I have to say, after a while and a lot of the touring that we've done, it's rented gear and sometimes even rented guitars. And I've become a real purist. No pedals, right into the amp. You know?
Yeah.
From a bass player point of view, anyway. So I just want a good bass set up properly, you know. But
I like that in a bass player.
yeah, I don't need any pedals.
I know Lenny's a purist because he's only got one pickup.
That's right.
That's the Lenny Kaye
trying to make it-
special.
The Lenny Kaye special.
And he's only got 4 strings, so he's leaving the 6 for Gerry. More strings for Gerry.
This is fun, guys.
Amazing that we're all in different places, sequestered. And
I can show you a ton of pedals if you want. I mean, is that interesting? I don't know. If it's
yeah, sure.
Why not?
Yeah.
There's a little. I'm working on a new. I'm always building stuff, so I'm working on a new pedal board here. Oh, sorry, I have to move my
You
mic.
have a film crew there, Jerry?
Bounty fruit? What?
Do you have your own film crew there? Are they following you?
Yeah. So here's some on the bench that I'm fixing.
Oh, you fix pedals too.
Well, they break, you know. That's the problem with them. I drop them and they break, or the man drops them. The man who carries my stuff around. This is a setup from, you know, that I use a lot in recording. That's just kind of parked here. It's a little electric tree of stuff going on over there. And then there's a little rack over by the window tied into, and a bunch of amps.
Don't you normally play out of 2 amplifiers?
Yeah, I
Correct.
started using the 2 amp thing. And then this is the kind of like, you know, this is what's going on over here. Board. And then these are just old favorites. And then there's this thing, which is the Synthi Hi-Fly, which Gilmore used. There was only about 100 of them made.
Wow.
EMS, the people who made those suitcase Eno synthesizers and stuff. It's a crazy box. It comes on a stand and it's got 2 foot pedals, but it sounds incredible.
Wow. Like an envelope or?
It's got a fuzz in it. It's got a this weird there'd be a high pass filter, and then it's got this crazy vibrato section, where you still have selectable envelopes and but the filters sound incredible in it. So these vibratos and stuff you can get are just otherworldly. But it's hard to learn. Like if I'm using it for a while, I get into it. I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I know what's going on. And then I go back to it 6 months later. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on right now, which can be good or horrible.
Sounds like a band.
Yeah, good or horrible. That's my band. So, you know, yeah. I like the pedal thing. But I like the way they shape sounds. So that's what's interesting to me. You know.
Yeah. I've sat in that room with Gerry many times, and we worked on records together, and it's pretty remarkable. You just plug in these boxes, and you're like, how is that sound coming out of that box? And it's just a combination of things that he's using in his own, obviously his touch and musicality, and it's just it's pretty remarkable. Yeah, it's talk about a great painter. That's, you know, he's doing a lot with sound.
Gerry, how do you decide when you go out with an artist what you're gonna bring? Like, how do you go and pick?
Well, lately I've been trying to build like little systems, different little rigs, and they're, you know, I would use a different rig with like Suzanne Vega than I would if I went and did the Bowie stuff. So like I'd always have maybe 2-3 rigs going at the same time. And then they're more tailored towards the Suzanne one is more, you know, it's a little more gentle and water-like, and you know, so high frequencies and sparkly, and then it's got a soloistic element, but it's not, you know, it's maybe a fuzz box on there, but it's not super crazy. And then the other one that I use for my solo stuff and the Bowie stuff is a lot more thicker, aggressive, and then dry, choppier, more kind of mangled sounds and pitch shifting and stuff like that. And then these super long, you know, delays and reverbs that you can use in a stereo setting. So it's very instantly ambient, you know. It's really fun. It's a bit of a thing though, and it's a lot of stuff you've got to carry around.
Yeah.
You know, you see me going through the airport and you're like, that poor guy.
That poor valet.
Yeah, that poor valet.
Hey, did we happen to see a rose pedal when you showed us the pedals?
Oh yeah, you guys just send me the rose, and I'm loving it.
Pretty amazing, yeah.
But I'm trying to learn it right now, and it just, you know, the little combinations of buttons to get to the different things that it does. Because it does so much, and that's my learning curve. That's my study right now. But already I've gotten amazing things from it that I really love, and not in a super, like it can do some of those, like when you jump the multipliers, you can jump the multipliers on the hot button. That's pretty cool sound to me. You know,
an H9 as well. Have you?
Yeah, the H9. Well, here's I'll show you. Going back over to the layer. This is what I used with David back on the reality tour. If you can see it, I brought it in. So it's a floating 6-bass rack with a Eventide H3000
Wow.
into a mixer and a love tone filter, right? The Vortex I just stuck in there because I had the space in the rack. But so that's what I used to take, and now I take this H9, which is everything's higgledy-piggledy here, but this guy.
There you go.
And use that instead.
There you go.
It runs on a 9-volt, and then the rose.
Saves you back, Gerry, huh?
Yeah.
Hey, with the
There's no saving me. I realized that a long time ago.
Unbalanced.
What?
How would you get into the 3000 unbalanced? Like, would you? Because isn't that a balanced unit?
Yeah. So that's why I had to bring a little mixer.
Oh, it's a mixer first.
There's a little mixer, and then it's also pin 3 hot or something. It's reversed and XLR, so you know, custom cables, and sits in there in the mixer, and then the guitar would go out on a send from the mixer, and then the returns would come back, back into the mixer, and then that output would go back to the amps in mono.
Wow, Jesus.
Amp on mono. So I had a whole amp, like this double rectifier Mesa Boogie with a 2x12 cab, and this thing on a send, you know. So and then I could MIDI switch the programs. So it would just either turn on or off, and I would dial up the presets, the patches that I wanted. But it was very effective. It really worked, you know.
Do you have a favorite effect that you've heard on a record that kind of you inspired to like get to? Like before you got into effects, was there like just a sound you heard on a record that blew your mind?
You know who really turned me on to this thing, I think, was Harvey Mandel. Does anybody know?
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Mandel.
So Redentor.
He had this really dark tone. I remember thinking, wow, that's really interesting, you know? And that was just nothing. That was just a guitar. I think I mean, when I got a Memory Man, that was my first. I saved up and got a Memory Man, and then my brother-in-law brought me back a Boss Chorus from Japan. He was into computers, and he was over there, and so I had two pedals: my SG disc guitar and an AC30, and that was it. I was like, boom, I love this, because that became, James would know what I'm talking about. It became part of the instrument. The delay became part of the instrument, and that's that whole, playoff of writing with the effect in mind. So the combination of the music and the treatment or the shaping, then was like, oh, that's really interesting.
Do you have a couple of compressors you use?
I do use compressors, yeah.
Like different ones?
Well, I've been mucking around with that a bit. For ages, I was using the TC G-Force. So I'd always just use the compressor in there. It's very transparent and stuff. But I got one recently that's a little bit like an 1176 Deep Six, I think it's called. Wampler or one of those brands, but Deep Six. It's very nice. And it's got a blend control between dry and wet, and I think that really helps on a compressor,
right?
Because you can decide how much of the transient to keep and how much to let go.
I've always been trying to find the right compressor for bass in a live situation.
Right.
Yeah.
You might definitely get one with a balance control where it can be dry.
Does Kim make a live compressor, like a pedal?
Oh yeah. Well, he
can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was. Geez, James is going to tell me what the name of it was. Hang on. I'll be right back.
I always like the sound of Tony Levin's bass in King Crimson, like the compression on there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. He's got this kind of custom box.
Squeeze
Right.
box.
Is it a squeeze
The
box?
squeeze box? Okay.
Squeeze box. I don't.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, those are great.
Yeah.
He only started using that like in the late 80s, early 90s, because before that he was just using a Boss compressor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the PS2 or something.
Yeah, that simple pedal, and then he had the Boss octave pedal as well.
Right.
But the thing with Tony was you if you're ever in the studio with him and he was working on a song, and he was learning the song, he was really just focused on like absorbing and integrating the song into his kind of brain and into his fingers. So when he was playing along, he really wasn't, that part of the performance really wasn't kind of important to him. So it's kind of like going, wow, he's not really getting it, and it's not. And then he suddenly, after a couple of passes, go, okay, I'm ready now, and then he just play, and all of a sudden you go, what just happened? Because the sound would go from like this to like boom, 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 and you think, did he just put on some pedals? And it was no, like it was literally just his fingers on the neck, and he then knew what he was going to play, and all of a sudden the sound just came into focus. It was really uncanny. A lot of time he went DI. It was really weird.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Kevin, you and Gerry came over from the old country. Did you come over together?
No. We actually worked together at a studio, a place called Lombard Sound, back in 1980, 79, 80,
80, yeah.
81, yeah. And then when Gerry, we kind of left around the same time. Gerry went off to study.
I sent him over I said, go over there and get me a place to stay.
So he went off to make his fortune by learning how to play classical guitar, and I went to another studio in Dublin called Women Lane, and I stayed there for another 3 years or something like that. And then I left there and came here, and then Gerry ended up starting a band with his friend Donald. They got signed to Ireland, and after they finished recording it, we connected again, and he wanted me to come over, and I ended up mixing that record. And that was in the late 80s, Gerry, is that right?
Did you ever get paid, Kevin?
No, I never got paid. I'm still waiting to get paid on that bloody job. Yeah.
Take care of it now.
Yeah. And
Checks in the mail. Checks in the mail.
Yeah.
Well, that's when I reconnected with you, right?
Yeah.
And then started coming to New York,
Yeah, in a couple of years, yeah, they started coming to New York, and then I was working on a project that I thought Gerry would be the perfect guitarist for, and I, invited him over for that, and then pretty much he came and kind of never went back.
Can't get rid of him.
Yeah, and I'm still waiting for the check.
He's like a virus.
Yeah. But the other irony is that we grew up like a mile and a half from each other in Dublin. We went to the same school, albeit a year or 2 years apart.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. Yeah.
So what's the current vibe there, like with what's going on now? Is it, I mean, obviously you guys have family there, I would imagine, and
yeah, I think they're doing okay. I mean, they really have it on lockdown. They have a 2-kilometer thing, and they're taking it very seriously. But I think they've, if flatten the curve is the right way to communicate it, they are keeping it down, and they're starting to get it under control. Am I right, Kev? Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, and I think they're, they jumped on it about a week before we did, and it's just amazing that difference. I mean, the population's just 4.5 million people, so it's not and there's space, but Dublin has 1.5 million people living in it, so there would be a lot of, and Irish people are just very convivial anyway. They want to be together, so asking people to shelter in place is not something that's natural to them. Like, they're just very outgoing, and but they've remained in place. I think similarly, the nursing home thing is, there's a prevalence of COVID cases in nursing homes, but unlike here, they've actually sent medical personnel in there, and they're testing, and they're trying to kind of keep it under control. But yeah, I mean, I think they have shelter in place for another 2 weeks, and then they've already got a plan to open up slowly. But yeah, we'll see how it unfolds.
So James has just informed me that we have a full circle here, that the retrospect audio, the squeeze box, Tony, that you were talking about,
Right.
is an all tube optical compressor, and that Tony Levin still has the prototype for the squeeze box. How's that?
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
I never gave it back.
And it's probably because it was handmade that it sounds so good.
Yeah.
Well, like
Yeah.
Tony Levin would say, he'll take his bass off and he'll say, well, how does it sound now?
Yeah.
That's great.
Classic.
We did some concert. Do you remember this, Lenny? In Kazan,
Yeah, that
Russia.
crazy,
It's like the biggest
like-
crowd we ever played to. It's like 200,000 people or something.
gigantic.
And we were there with a Crimson project, and they had a big after party. We all, went back to the bar and drank loads of vodka like you would do in Russia. And but I bombarded Tony Levin with bass questions. He was nice to me, but I was like, and on this song, what strings were you playing? And just use a pick. And he, double fantasy or whatever. But he was.
Did he show you the stick?
His stick, yeah.
So
He pulled it out.
John and I did a record with probably 30 years ago. And I'm not going to tell the fucked up stories.
Come on, tell it. Come on.
No. I can't.
It's so good.
Bad. But there was one song that he was playing. He was like G and L basses, were they? Or
Right.
But he had a 3-string bass. And I was like, wow, 3-string, and he's, well, could totally be done. And then on a dare, he said, okay, the next song, I'm playing on 1 string. And I was like, don't fuck up my artist record, because I'm questioning the 3 strings. And it's one of the great, it's such an amazing track. And after he did it, he was like, I should do this more often. And it's kind of a lesson, to me, it was a little bit of a lesson in bass playing.
You should have said to him,
That's all they
"Let's
should
try
be
it with
allowed.
both strings."
Which string was it? What kind of string was it?
It was Gage.
A penguin string.
What was the gauge?
On that session, I was watching him, like he was like a gladiator out there.
Yeah.
He was so like imposing and playing and huge and just like, he, you know, it was so surreal. It was so great. Like,
But what a prince, you know.
yeah.
And you know, what a player.
Yeah.
Right on. Gentlemen.
Hi. So when do we go to the bar?
Well,
Exactly.
or
When does the beer start?
play cards, like backgammon or something?
So James, do you have any more holy grails for me or no?
I do not. I'll keep my eyes open. But you know, Stu, you asked earlier about a sound on a record that like first noticeable effect. And I remember hearing Badge, you know, by Cream, and that Leslie guitar. I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
You know, and it just, that was really, aside from a fuzz guitar, like that was the first thing I heard different on a guitar that like just got me going and you know.
It's funny you should say that, because I had a similar experience with the same effect, but it was the opening lick, I believe, of Tears of Rage, which was
Yeah.
which was the very first sound of the band I ever
Right.
heard. I think it was the first song on Big Pink. Is that right?
Right.
So it's literally the first sound of the band that I ever heard, and it was Leslie guitar.
And right around the same year too, right? That, I mean, Cream was probably 67, 68, and
So maybe that
Tears of
preceded.
Rage was about the same. So there weren't that many effects around back then, you know, that, so they were just starting using the plug into the cabinet, right?
I loved how
Where
Peter
Magnetone comes in.
I loved how
Magnetone
Peter
created vibrato.
used the Leslie effect on a lot of Genesis vocals. That was really cool. That was the first time I actually, and I didn't realize it was a Leslie at that point, but I was just like, what the fuck? Like on the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. So it's so incredible. Like just the use of that taste wise was always, that blew my mind.
Okay, so here's one of our many fans has just written in and said, for Lenny, I would love to hear a story from Lenny about the making of Patti Smith's Easter album. You got anything?
Well, let me tell you, it all began.
You got a point when you're telling the story.
Let me tell you, I knew Johnny Thunders, and he was not on that record.
When he
Easter
was a squall.
Easter was a record that, you know, we had made it in the months after Patti fell off the stage. So we were off the road. She had a two cracked vertebrae in her neck, and we proceeded on it very, very slowly because, you know, it was almost like we needed time to bring everything back. I believe the Radio Ethiopia tour was just insane. You know, Patti pushing monitors off the stage, and you know, we'd play the bottom line and we'd be like running all across the tables, knocking things over. I mean, I have to say that when everything kind of fell apart, it was almost like, say, Bob Dylan's motorcycle accident. You realize you're just going too fast and it gives you a time to regroup. And I have to say that Jimmy Iovine was really important to us making that record, because he was just encouraging us all the time to just find great songs. I mean, for me, I'd be out in the studio, you know, strumming on something, and he'd, you know, rush out and say, oh, those are good chords, keep it up, keep it up. And then of course we give him something like Ghost Dance, which was not the hit that he had imagined. But I just really remember the fact that we were very, very focused, that we wanted to make a record that showed us without any misinterpretation. That, you know, the third album is really the one where you've kind of figured yourself out and you want to make a very definitive statement. And, you know, we were not as youthful and inexperienced as we were when we were making Horses and trying to corral all these influences together. And we weren't really as crazy and on the edge as we were with Radio Ethiopia. So Easter was the one where we wanted to have everything well taken care of. And you know, I mean, I think it's a very strong and very forceful and definitive statement of who we were. I mean, obviously it's filtered through my experience. I remember when I was doing the solo on Rock and Roll N-word, you know, I was just out there playing, and I just remember leaping in the air during the middle of it and coming down and just being really like taken over by the song. You know, it was a really nice moment in time, and to make it in a record plant where Bruce Springsteen is making Darkness in one studio and Lou Reed is making, I believe it was Coney Island Baby in another one, you felt really just compressed in that, you know, great compression of creativity, everybody trying to find their moment of becoming. And, you know, it was great.
Who engineered that record?
Shelley Yakis, the great Shelley Yakis. And I remember when Jimmy and Shelley were mixing Because the Night, and when those drums come in at the front, they were both behind the board pushing all the faders, but of course, because that's what you had to do then, there was no computer mixing at the time. And they just went, yeah! And they just pushed the drums all the way to the top. It was exciting to watch happen. And you know, it was a good way. I mean, I have some nostalgia for that because a lot of it is very live, and then you did some overdose, but you didn't have, you know, we never linked up, you know, more than the 24 tracks. But there was enough room to experiment, you know. It was a good moment in time before you really got into having too much choice. And I say that also liking Pro Tools and liking the things that you can do. I mean, it's great, you know, you want to edit a piano part, you don't have to leave the studio for 3 hours while the engineer does a jigsaw puzzle on the piece of tape. You know, it makes things a lot easier. And then of course, with the unlimited amount of tracks that you have, it makes it much more available, labor intensive. Yes. As we like to say, Tony, that sucks. Come on in.
John, were you at the record plant when they were making that? No.
No, that was Lenny. That was 76.
We started 77 into 78.
Yeah, I started 79.
Yeah.
I missed a lot of amazing things by like a year or two. It's pretty crazy. And Lenny, Because the Night is the legend that I've heard of Bruce slipping the cassette instrumental under the door. Is that true, or is that?
No, I don't. I think Jimmy was aware that Because the Night was part of the dozens of songs that Bruce was amassing for what would become Darkness. I remember riding home with him in a cab at 5 o'clock in the morning one night thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we could get Bruce and Patti to do something together? You know, it would be great. I always liked Bruce. I saw him for the first time in 1969 at Monmouth College down by the Jersey Shore in his band Child. And I always like to tell him the story when I see him, but you know, they did a 12-minute version of Season of the Witch. He played a Black Les Paul and he was amazing. You know, I didn't know who this guy was, but he was just like there. But I think Jimmy really hoped that, you know, Bruce could do something, and Bruce actually wrote a couple songs, and I wish I had those cassettes, that they haven't been lost for time, but he wrote a couple songs for Patti in her style. And I remember us listening to it and thinking, you know, it's kind of like we do, only sideways, you know, and Patti not following up on that. But finally, Jimmy one day got the cassette from Bruce of what was then Because the Night. It had a lot of different lyrics, obviously, about, you know, working all day in the hot sun and coming home to your woman or whatever. And it had a kind of a Latin rhythm. That's what I remember. It was like, you know, I don't know, had a nice twitch to it. But when he gave it to Patti, she went home and, I remember, us listening to the song. I don't know whether it was before she was waiting for the famous phone call from Fred and thinking about lyrically, but I remember her playing it to me over the phone, and there was no way that that chorus was not completely memorable. I mean, it still, of course, is. And when we did it as a band, we kind of evened it out. We made it a rock song. It wasn't quite a rock song, and I think Bruce's demo is probably floating around somewhere, but of Because the Night. But we kind of roughened it up and straightened it out, and Jimmy just loved that. Really, he really did, and it gave us a hit that is still sung along to around the world, which is a beautiful thing. Sometimes an artist is idiosyncratic. Especially like Patti. Also, I've worked with Suzanne Vega, and they're not, they have their artist things, but to have a song which reaches around the world, that's almost transcends anyone as an artist. And it's a beautiful thing when that happens, when an artist can have a mega hit and still retain their personality within it and have it speak beyond their core audience. And I'm always very grateful when we launched that song, and people, they love to hear it.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing.
Did you know when you were recording it that it was a hit? Could you feel it?
You could feel it, but then a lot of times you feel when you're recording something it's a hit. It's like, oh yeah. But I mean, it was definitely very, it was a song that Arista could get behind. A lot of what we did, was a little abstruse, but Arista could get it. And I remember as it was ascending the charts, I went with Jimmy up to Arista once, and he played the head of promotion when it was starting to slow a little bit. And he played the head of promotion, that and another song at the time, Bonnie Tyler's Total Eclipse from the Heart, and said, look, Because the Night is going to beat this. And, they went out there and notched it up a few more, things on the chart. And, because it's also like it expresses a great universal emotion. That's what a hit single is, a universal emotion. Mm-hmm. And, many are called, but few are chosen.
Oh, people have the power, kind of reaches that kind of power as well. Certainly live. It's that's a pretty strong moment in your guys' show.
But it took a long time. I mean, when that album, when it came out on Patti and Fred's Dream of Life record, it didn't do anything. Didn't really, it's only by watching its roots grow deeper and its meaning grow deeper that it's become the anthem it always should have been.
Right. How long did it take?
For people, well, I don't know. I mean, Patti wasn't playing in 1987 when Dream of Life came out. So, it had a long fuse, I guess. But, again, when you speak to people who, it's beyond your fans, all of a sudden it speaks to the world, and especially with the world going the way it has and is, it seems to increase in relevance.
Right. Did you know that Luca was going to do a similar thing?
Well, when me and Steve Adabo and Shelly Ackes mixed it for 3 days straight, we thought it better. No, we just knew that it was a great song. It was just wonderfully performed by Suzanne. It really even grew in the studio because we were able to, triple the guitar parts. For instance, John Gordon's incredible solo, we just tripled it. Suzanne was like, once isn't enough, two isn't enough. Well, let's go for three. But, we could really feel the company getting behind the record. And, it was the record that Suzanne needed that to do. She couldn't have done it for the first record because then she was growing out of this very insular folk scene. Now she had a full band with a real drummer, on the first album because there was so much pressure from her contemporaries and herself not to go rock, which I believed in too. I mean, again, you know, with Suzanne coming out of folk scene, it would be simple to just have her do folk rock. But we felt, Steve and I, that if there's going to be percussion on the first album, it should be very percussive, almost like little lines on the drums instead of boom, chick, boom, boom, chick. But by the second album, she was really ready to embrace being a part of a band. And you know, totally a step upwards. And I mean, all of us, many of us have worked with her in this particular chat. But you know, she's just a beautiful artist, so heartfelt and so
coming,
unique.
yeah, but coming from the scene that you were ensconced in, you know, you were on the Bowery and she was in Washington Square Park, and
It might have been different universes for all that, for all the you know, they were very protective over at the Speakeasy about their folk music. They were in reaction, in a sense, to what was happening at CBGB's. They didn't want, you know, they didn't want to quote. It was like, you know, the Bob Dylan thing all over again, you know, in Newport. They didn't, you know, every overdub, you know, had to be discussed because is it changing the integrity of the music? And luckily, Suzanne was not part of that, only partially part of that folk scene. You know, she loved Lou Reed. She was much broader. And I believe that's why I was brought into the project, to kind of expand into a musical universe and let her know that wherever she wanted to go, it was possible to get there and to even grow from there.
did Steve bring you in?
Nancy Jeffries from A&M Records brought me in. She was the one who thought, you know, this is a really good artist, but she needs a larger sense of possibility, I guess. And you know, I mean, I'm not an engineer, so I can't say I dialed in any sound. Steve is an awesome engineer and an arranger. My job mostly with Suzanne was just to keep encouraging her to step outside and go for it, you know, to not worry that, you know, because in the end, it's a song and you want it to communicate.
What year was that? Was Luca?
I was 85 and Luca was in 87. And
so Solitude Standing, was Luca on Solitude Standing?
yes.
Right.
I love Solitude. I always thought Solitude Standing should have been as big a hit as Luca. You know, really close to my heart. But of course, the biggest hit off that album, the real hoot, was Tom's Diner.
Yeah.
And there's a funny story about Tom's Diner, since we're telling funny stories. Suzanne went, you know, it's an a cappella song, and Suzanne went and sang it 6 or 7 or 8 times when we decided to do it. And we circled the take we liked, and, you know, nothing else to do on it. We're not adding instruments, so just put it aside. And when we're out mixing at A&M, we go into the room and we pull up the take and we listen to it and we say, man, that was great. And then we look and it's not the take we circled. So we went back to the take we circled and it wasn't as good. So, you know, and then that group DNA in England chopped it up and made it a disco hit and made it as big a hit as Luca, which was really kind of amazing.
Was that the first conversion to an MP3? Is that right?
I think they used her actual vocal as to test the fidelity of the MP3. Right. Excuse me, not the MP3, the CD.
See,
No, you're right, Lenny. It was the MP3 algorithm, the Frankenhauser Institute or something in Germany. I know I'm saying it wrong, but there's an institute there, and they have an anechoic room, and they do all this science stuff with sound. But the guy was developing the MP3 and he thought he had it perfected, and he heard Suzanne's version of the a cappella Tom's Diner. And so he put that through the machine, the algorithm, and it was not right. And he went back and worked again with the algorithm until it did Tom's Diner. So we've been there. I've toured with her since in recent times, and we've been there. Like we were in town and they invited us over, and we had a little tour, and they dubbed her the mother of the MP3.
We can blame Suzanne then, huh?
And Lenny.
I think we should blame Lenny. Yeah.
Blame me. I circled
That
the
other
wrong
take, they wouldn't
The
have
other
done
take, it wouldn't have been the theme.
Well, no, I think you should have blamed the assistant engineer for queuing up the wrong take. Who was
No,
that
I
assistant
should have
engineer?
given him a bonus. That's what I should have done.
Yeah.
It was really funny. It just goes to show that sometimes the decision you make on the fly when you're making a record is not the one. You know.
How do you, it's the age-old question. How do you have perspective? You know what I mean? In your own work and work that you're doing for other people. You know, you think, oh yeah, this is the perfect take, and you come back a day later and you go, what was I thinking? This is terrible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, you know, all those doubts I had. God, what am I worried about? That one bass drum beat, you know, thing right over, you know, it's a little bit off. You know, it's if anybody notices that one bass drum beat, which is hit a little shyer than the other, they bought the record, joined the fan club, and
went to the show, bought
you're
merchandise.
fine.
Yeah.
That is a nice moment though, when you listen back the next day to something that you've kind of written off, and it's kind of like, oh, wait, it's actually, I actually really like it, or you know, something.
Thank God.
When
You
you,
know, I prefer like a year.
yeah,
A year, and then you really like it.
how about 10 years? I got stuff.
We've all had those experiences going back, listening to records of our past.
Well, you know, it's the mix thing too. It's like you ever go back from a studio with 4 different mixes of something of the same song, and then you have to, wait, what's different? What? I can't hear that. What? You know, it's like, oh, you know, psychoacoustics, I believe it's called.
Well, I think we lull ourselves into thinking that those little moves we made are really, you know, important, but in fact they're not. You know, they're so subtle that they're rendered indifferent.
Yeah, they're really for you. They're maybe not for anybody else. But,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, mixers are like singers. You know, singers don't like the sound of their own voice. Mixers don't like the sound of their own mixes. You know, they go, I got to make it better. I want to make it sound like somebody else. You know, when in fact you're really, you know, you have to mix the way you hear, and that's the only way it's going to come out.
I know some singers who like the sound of their own voice.
Me too.
Who?
Not talent.
Well, send me the list because I haven't met them yet.
Me, for instance.
Oh, dear, you.
I have the list, Gerry.
Oh, I have the list. I have a coupon.
It's a list of one. Is it a list of one?
No, I'm not going there.
You know, speaking of like not liking your own voice, so John and I have been doing this Gear Club thing for a couple of years, and I fucking hate listening to my own voice.
Hate my voice.
But you got a good voice. I like your voice, John. But now in this new age, now we're looking at it like I got to see myself on this screen, and that you guys are very handsome.
I hate the look of my voice.
I just put a piece of tape over where my face is. It gets better.
I think there's a soft focus now you can get on Zoom, like in all these apps, that you can kind of doll yourself up a bit.
I'm not sure.
Like I'm not wearing this hat. This is computer generated.
I'm not talking about how I look, you know, how it looks out there. I'm just, it's so like I've never had the experience of seeing myself talk before.
It's another level of disappointment to bring to our lives.
Stewart, you look exactly like you do when I'm talking to you.
Thank you. But
there seems to be a little kind of fuzzy gauze around your face, like it's
light.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not as a sharp focus as I would imagine.
Oh,
He just had Botox.
It kind of looks like you took some Vaseline and put it on the camera, you know, just kind of give it soft focus.
Good idea.
That stuff gets everywhere.
I tell you.
Tell me about it.
That's why you never have it in the studio.
But so guys, I think we might be at our time here. Anything anyone wants to?
We got a question in that I'd never asked anybody, but maybe we'll ask each of our pals. But the question is, what's the coolest piece of gear that you guys have within arm's reach? Or your favorite piece of gear, I guess, would be the coolest.
I'll go.
That is Bong.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
1965 Fiesta Red jazz bass.
Fuck
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah,
Boom.
man.
Well, let's see. I have to go get something.
Hold on.
Here we go.
Oh,
What is that?
This is my favorite fuzz box ever. The Fox Tone Machine. It's got nasty fuzz. It's got like a high octave. You put it in a track, fantastic. This one's like 1970, but they reissued them about 10 years ago. If you can find one, grab it.
wow.
Do you have one, Jer?
I don't
You know
have
this?
one. I don't have
Oh,
one. I don't want to copy your vibe, but that looks amazing.
I only have one piece of gear near me, and it's this.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Good job.
What is that, John?
It is called the Bleep Labs Thingamagoop 2.
It's awesome.
So
Is it like a sampler?
It's just like a mini waveform thing with a speaker and a 9-volt, and
Optical thing, right?
yeah, I actually found it. I found it in Minneapolis, and I couldn't believe it was so ridiculous. So I immediately bought it, and then gave it to my then maybe 4-year-old daughter when I got back, and then immediately stole it back from her and said, "Fuck this, I'm keeping it."
so, guys, I got two.
Here's my famous piece of gear.
Yeah.
All these records, which I
Yay!
steal licks from all the time.
Yeah, man.
But here's the
Yay.
nice, here's some good guitar porn for everybody.
There you go.
Nice.
Unfortunately, I can't play any of them. I've never been able to play lap steel guitar. I just can't, don't have the tone.
Really difficult.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like
Those
guitar.
damn bar slants.
It's like guitar in the dark.
Yeah.
Within arm's reach, this guy, this 69. This was
69?
it's a 69 SG custom,
Wow.
3 pickup. This is off an MG sports car,
Nice.
which I no longer have, but I have this bit.
Wow.
And but I bought this when I was 16 years old from a guy out of the evening paper, the ads, the evening press. Sold my 10-speed racing bicycle. I bought this, and I still bring it on. I brought it on tour with David, and it's great. It's great guitar. It's got a lot of personality.
Harmony Rocket, right, with the Bigsby,
Nice.
Nice.
right? Cool.
Stewart, you're my harmony rocket.
This is James Frazie's, but talk about
Oh.
your
Damn it.
guitar. But another thing I just have in arm's reach is, and James, you'll appreciate this. This is a Guild 1962 Hoboken, made in Hoboken when the Guild factory was in Hoboken.
Yeah.
And I have a neighbor who, like about 15 years ago, she bought it in 1962, put it under her bed, and never, it was still like a Joan Baez thing. I'm going to play. She got a book. It had books in it. She never played it, and she just offered it to me. So, and it didn't have strings on it, and I brought it down to, and I'm not going to use. Everyone's going to know the name of the guitar shop, but I'm not going to say it on Bleecker Street. Okay. Okay. Lenny, you know who I'm talking about.
If you didn't buy it,
You
you know
know.
who, you didn't pay enough.
Pay enough for it.
Okay, so I bring it in there, and they say to me, "Firewood, it's firewood. Throw it out." And I went, "Are you fucking kidding? This is like a beautiful guitar." And they they almost refused not to sell me strings because they said, you're going to waste your money. I said, no, no, no. I owe it to this gal. I want to string it up and see what it is. And the neck was a little bit dodgy in one spot. And then about 8 years ago, I gave it to a luthier who humidified it for a month. And it's one of the great guitars. And I
Wow.
have people come to the studio. This is one of the, I mean,
Those
Gil's
are my favorite nylon string guitars.
Yeah.
The Guild Mark IIs, Mark IIIs, 4s are great.
Yeah.
Whose idea was the humidity thing? I mean,
This-
where did that come from?
This luthier dude who just said, I'm telling you, it's been too dry for 40 years. And, but another great guitar we have here, which is Shanahan's, which is the Guild, your 12-string Guild.
Yeah, which I got from you, James. Yeah.
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 Give it back.
Right.
I remember we were making a record in Electric Lady, and I had that guitar on a stand. We had to give the day up because Doyle Bramall wanted to use the studio for a Clapton session, and then I got a call the next day, and there were, Eric wants to know if he can play your 12-string, Guild acoustic guitar. It's like,
Hey, you could use the high
how much does he
string.
want to pay me? But so anyway, Eric got to play the 12-string on the recording, supposedly.
Wow,
Nice.
Eric.
I had Air Supply use one of my guitars. How's that?
All out of love.
None of you seem too impressed.
Not love.
Is that a picture of Elvis Presley behind you, Tone?
Yes, it is. The king. He's
King.
also over there. Wait, let me see if I can turn my my screen. You can see my little room. See him?
Yeah, he's there for the session.
Like it.
He's always there. Sometimes
Nice.
he wears a hat, puts nice scarves on him. That way I feel, and actually, I don't know if you can see, but right behind me, look who's on the floor.
Oh, wow.
Ah,
Mary.
Woo, Mary. It's Mary.
Well, I don't have anything within hands reach, no weakness whatsoever, because everything's in the box.
Yeah, but
Okay,
right
hands,
here, baby.
ears, that's about it. But
Yeah.
Gerry, I want to ask you that little emblem from the MG, is that the MG that we rode around Dublin in?
Yeah, that's
That
the
one.
same car. Yeah.
Yeah.
Had a little 4-speed box and an overdrive switch, which was like a 5th gear.
Yeah.
And when I sold the car, whatever, I kept the thing. When I was renting, I think I got a newer one. Anyway, I ended up with 2 of them, and I figured out it fit the guitar. So I just,
Custom.
yeah, there's my,
Gerry, he almost tried to custom my body driving around in that car a few times, like
oh my God.
we, too many late night sessions and maybe a couple of too many beers.
Yeah, and there was a time, so I would do the night shift in Lombard Studios, and I would come in that car and park it, and there was a block of flats across the road, which is, housing development or whatever. But, I did the session. I came out at 6 a.m., got in the car, turned the key, nothing, and the battery's in the trunk. So I went to the trunk and opened it up. Battery was gone. The kids had come out and took the wires and ran off with the battery. I mean, it was like 6 a.m. on a rainy, cold Tuesday in Dublin.
Sometimes they'd siphon off the petrol, right, Gerry? They just
Oh man,
yeah.
They take
They-
anything that
They,
wasn't
they,
there.
they didn't siphon it off so that they could put it in their car. They siphoned it off into a glass milk bottle so they could sniff it. There was a
And then they throw it on your car and set your car on fire.
yeah, it was yeah.
Those crazy Irish people.
Yeah, I was looking for something to do or burn.
Unbelievable.
So guys,
I heard that the gas huffing thing was huge in Washington, like east of Seattle. The kids growing up in like Ellsberg, like where the screaming trees ended up coming from. I talked to them at one point about growing up, and they're like, "Yeah, we used to like huff a lot of gas," and I was like, "What?"
I think there was a Seattle group called Gas Huffer.
Yeah, they're right, gas huffer, right? There you go. Very
Jesus.
funny, but such a weird thing growing up in Brooklyn. Like,
Yeah.
I would never, like, what?
Weren't people doing it when there was that gas shortage? They were siphoning. You remember that?
70s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You siphoned, you stuck a thing down.
Stick a tube in and you stuck on it, yeah, and then you just pour it in and then you sniff sniff the foams. Yeah.
How far we've come.
Oh, you were supposed to spit it
We're
out.
at the same place.
Don't try this at home, kids.
I have no toilet paper.
Well, great to see everybody.
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So much.
Thanks for making time in your schedule to like hang.
Well, we just had to, you know, we had to push back the quarantini martini. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
The quarantini.
I wish.
Yeah.
Well, great to see everybody, and you guys stay beautiful.
Be well.
Okay,
Right,
maybe we
yeah.
could all be in the same room again. That would be awesome.
Yeah, well,
Wait for that.
yes, baby. And I got to put this one thing out here for Eventide to that tomorrow they're doing a Twitch stream with Damian Taylor, producer engineer for Bjork, Arcade Fire, The Killers, featuring Crush Station tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Wow.
Is that right, James? 9 a.m.
But that's Pacific time.
Oh, noon Eastern time. Got it. Okay. Right. Noon Eastern time.
Right.
9 a.m. Did I say that right, John?
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Okay. You guys are
Thank you,
beautiful.
guys. I can't wait to see you all.
Tony, Lenny, Kevin, Jerry.
Say hi to the studio, Stuart.
What's that nice studio?
Say hi to the studio.
Oh, I will. I'm gonna go wipe it down.
Hey, great to see everybody.
All right.
Okay, be safe.
Be safe, everybody. Good to see everyone.
Yeah, likewise.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.